Well, welcome to PodSpill. It's been according to our YouTube uploads, a 3-month hiatus.
Yeah.
But we're back.
Crazy stuff happened.
It's holidays happened, family issues
happened,
school, job issues. We're here and we're ready to talk about
we're back, baby.
Several things. We've rented this room in the Topeka Public Library.
For free.
Shout out.
Open source.
Shout out to free resources. And now we have the next hour and a half to fill content.
This is the Library of the Year, like 2 years ago.
It is.
Library of the Year.
National
folks.
Library of the Year.
I'm pretty sure Lawrence is beating us. They've
never won National Library.
They're number 2 this year, aren't they?
I don't know.
Yeah, but we were number 1.
Okay, but now we're not. Things open and it's different.
You guys reopened a new library?
I don't know.
Oh.
So anyways, I know.
They said you guys, and I assumed they meant Lawrence.
I don't know what's happening. So anyways, we're
Lawrence Alex.
going to talk about some really big things happening. The best thing that's happened this week is the Fergie National Anthem. We just got done watching that because who hadn't seen it before? I don't think Soren.
I hadn't seen it. Yeah,
and oof.
I kept hearing a bunch. A lot of it was like the celebrities reacting to, or like people reacting, because that's a thing all the time. But actually hearing it, I can get why Draymond Green kind of looked that way. He kept laughing the whole time.
Gosh, it was bad times. I guess we're gonna not. I don't really want to.
Hopefully they won't butcher it like they will the Solo film. But yeah.
Oh my God. Well, that's a good segue. He's the king of segues. We're gonna talk about Star Wars because we've all seen it now. Yes. That's all we do. This is welcome to Starscast. Starscast.
We're only 2 months behind on this.
Yeah, it's fine, but we need to dissect it. I feel like
there's a lot of things that happen.
It's gonna take up a big chunk. So going around, Soren, you've seen it.
Yeah, I think the trailer looks good, but none of the production stuff that they've been coming out with.
Solo or Last Jedi?
Oh, we're on the Last Jedi now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
We'll talk about Han Solo.
I enjoyed it. Had some issues with him kind of disappearing like everybody else.
Okay.
But the whole thing where he showed up as a Force ghost, that was really cool, because that was I think the reason why some people had an issue with that was because they don't understand where they're pulling it from in terms of the EU content, because you've never seen anything like that in the actual Star Wars stuff. Right. So whenever you push Force powers and people are like, oh, I don't know that stuff.
Yeah.
That's not what Luke
Everybody's
did.
It's just a hokey religion.
Hashtag not my Star Wars.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. Yeah. Wasn't there that the petition
to get it removed from canon,
which just
by a bunch of crybabies.
Yeah, it's just indicative.
Was that one real? Because there's also a bunch of troll accounts that were flooding with negative reviews because it was propaganda. Propaganda. Yeah.
No, I thought it was an actual petition that you could sign to get it going, but they didn't get that many.
I always wonder how many people signed those things as a joke.
Yeah.
Like they would ever do that.
Just a silent middle finger to Disney, but really they just now have all your
millions of dollars. They're not going to just get rid of it.
Good God. I don't know. I really liked it. So you've seen it once, Malcolm, you've seen it 3 times, and I've seen it 3 times.
Yes.
So on the one viewing, are you going to buy it? Probably.
I don't generally buy things like that.
Fair enough.
But I'll definitely go see it again or rent it again.
So you will watch it again?
I'll probably watch it again.
I
for sure.
only own Star Wars movies as far as movies go. I have Blu-ray, prequels, original trilogy. I'm waiting for the full trilogy to come out to buy the Blu-ray set because I feel like it's always a better value.
I do the steel books.
Yes, so nice, right?
Oh my God!
But they're $20 each or whatever.
Yeah.
See, I buy all the books on tape, so I just listen to all the old EU legacy stuff.
I buy them on my Kindle because I'm fancy. I also have Kindle now, guys.
Boy, you're stepping up!
Yeah.
Good Lord!
But
yeah. So I'm trying to recall because now it's been a couple months, obviously, since it's been out. So it was out December 20th, 5th?
Something like that.
Or was it the 20th, something like that?
Yeah, week of Christmas.
Now this is February
17th. It was December 17th.
So
with that.
I'm trying to remember all the things that people hated about it. They hated,
They hated
the
Luke's
Asian,
attitude. They
the
hated
Asian
everything
character.
about Luke.
They hated Luke.
People really didn't like Rose. Some people went as far to compare them to Jar Jar.
I loved Rose.
She was cool.
I thought her and Finn together was like this weird adulthood for Finn, kind of, rather than running away from every single thing, which is the whole point of like that sort of character dynamic.
Right.
But I really enjoyed when they flipped the script on us when they went to that rich world instead of going to like a shitty Tatooine or something like that. And they said, hey, it's just the same on the other side. Which
I thought that that was my least favorite part of the movie. Was that
it was definitely.
So I agree.
I liked literally just that part where they were like, haha, it's the society, and then the rest of it was just kind of they had to do some shit just to make it action.
They really pushed the whole like the rebels are seen equally as bad as the First Order, which is fine, but it didn't need to be to quite the extreme, I guess. So it was a really long way of saying, hey, no one really likes anyone when there's a war that no one really particularly cares about.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I felt like, people really thought that the scene on Canto Bight was like really like not necessary.
Yeah.
But kind of like what Soren was saying, like the whole thing where like Finn had to learn where he fit
what his role was
in this world. I felt like that was so I felt like in that it was necessary. I think there was some things that were like overly long. It's not like a perfect like sequence.
Yeah,
but
I understood why they had to like let all the animals escape and all that.
Sure.
But, like they do that in like the legacy part. There's like an actual scene within one of the books where they just go through like a exotic pet yard, and then at some point they just have to like release all the animals, and it's just another outbreak.
Sure.
I thought they could have done a lot more with like. We could have learned about some big players and politicians who might have been doing something bad during that point, or like they could have done more like espionage stuff to like figure out how to get the hacker instead of just he's in the same cell as we are.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of Benicio del Toro, one of my favorite actors ever, if they could just erase him
really
from the movie. What a waste.
Yeah.
They did it so they could write a book about him, which came out literally 2 days later. But he better do something in the next movie. Mm-hmm. Because that was just... It was just really unnecessary.
Throwaway cameo.
Yeah.
And it really made it weird when he like betrayed him.
Yeah, well, Star Wars has a whole bunch of throwaway people, so I wasn't so mad about him being a throwaway. But he was a throwaway up to the point that he betrayed them, and then it was just kind of like, so you're actually a real person.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were trying to make him like Han Solo, again, but then like everything else, they did the opposite. Yeah. Instead of coming to rescue them, he eavesdropped and sold them out.
Right. Yeah. I definitely got the Han Solo vibe from him, but like, it was too bad that it was cut short because I feel like he could have been interesting, but they just didn't do enough with that character for me. I'm trying to think if there's there's a lot of shit that people hated about this.
I'm really tired of like. It felt very Empire Strikes Back to me.
Sure.
Not just because it was a sequel, not just because we're still in the ice/salt world, or whatever
it's
that
the
whole
ice.
Salt.
Melts
salt,
ice.
not ice.
Call yourself a fan.
Like I licked it. Okay.
Red salt.
Red salt. It's blue ice, like red salt. Doing an opposite thing.
The weird creatures. I don't know.
It
felt too. They're too afraid to go in a completely new direction, which honestly I feel like if they would have done that, it would have been better because then you get rid of this sort of same sort of feel that I guess Star Wars has had even in the prequels, because the prequels still kind of feel like the originals in a weird way, and then the new ones are still trying to mirror the originals because everyone's just trying to do that. But since they just got rid of everything, then why not just go ahead and push a new direction? Not stuff like Leia floating...
Well, they are. I think
in
the
a weird
whole
way.
point of these three is to set up. They have the TV shows, but they also have 2 new trilogies coming out. One run by the Game of Thrones guys, and then one by Rian Johnson.
Yes,
who I'm very excited. So just real quick, this quickly went from a middle of the line Star Wars movie for me the first time to 1 or 2 top. It's like it might be my favorite Star Wars.
Yeah.
If you take out Rogue One, it's definitely 1 or 2. If you put in Rogue One, it'd be 1, 2, or 3.
I really liked, so the way it worked for me is that I've seen it 3 times, and so has Malcolm. But for me, I liked it initially. Like, okay, you know what? This is a good movie. I think, give it another shot. Then I gave it that another shot, and I was like, oh man, I might hate this. This might be really bad. So then I think I waited maybe two weeks or so, saw it a third time, and I was like, nope, yeah, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, so...
I think it's just... I think they did everything... Not everything right. There are definitely things I didn't like about it, but there were more things I liked than I didn't. And I just felt like it felt really different. Like Luke, like I mean, I think that they showed like obviously like how powerful he'd become, and like I think people really like they focused on like the like fighting aspect of like a Jedi or whatever, and like how skilled they are with like a lightsaber and whatever. But he had like progressed so far beyond that didn't even matter.
Yeah.
Like he was so powerful in the Force that it's like this is just I don't even need this. Like I think in Legends, like they even talked about like Emperor Palpatine. So like initially when we see him like in the prequels, he has like lightsabers and like he's dueling because he's not strong enough yet. But then later on,
he never has a lightsaber.
He never has lightsabers. Yep. Just he's completely
straight
dependent on the Force. So
yeah.
I don't know. I felt like this was.
I agree with that. I felt like they did do a good job at pushing like the lore and kind of the future of it, but in a very familiar way for me.
Yeah.
I still think that like one thing I really wished it wouldn't have ended on is that kid. Like, I understand we're pushing for the resistance and all that, and I totally get, like, oh, kids are the future, and they're the foundation of what, we're fighting for and all that. But, like, one thing I think people kind of overlook is that, like, Luke lost everything.
Yeah.
Like, as much as a Jedi is supposed to be that, like, balanced person of emotion, once it happens to you, it's a different experience. Because I'm rewatching The Walking Dead, and one of the main parts of that series is if you're out in the shit too long, it turns you into something else.
Yes.
And like I think that's what that movie actually did a really good job of showing, how it's just normal people. Which was kind of the point of Rey's character and how she, it's not Obi-Wan Kenobi or she's not a Skywalker or whatever and all that.
They're actually saying there might be a link. It makes sense though. Some people got mad when they said that, but it makes sense. If you're Kylo Ren and you're trying to get someone to join the dark side, it wasn't really the dark side. It was kind of his own.
I don't even know what he was gonna be after that.
I think he kind of redefines the dark side moving forward. So I guess I have a couple things, but the first I'm interested to see where Rian Johnson's trilogy happens. I'm gonna be really upset if it just like completely ignores Jedis and those things, because that's not Star Wars. That's just using Star Wars like name, in my opinion. Yeah. I really hope he goes Old Republic, because he does such cool stuff with the Force, and I feel like you can use that to kind of explain where Luke went. But like the kid thing, I liked it because as soon as it finished, I kind of knew where they were going. One, because they didn't kill Leia, and they said that was the plan. So I think originally they probably had Leia dying in the beginning of the next one, but it's going to be a jump, because now you have the new First Order, which is Kylo's, but you also need to reestablish the Resistance since it's like 10 people.
Yeah.
So I think that kid probably is skips forward to be a pilot or whatever, like a new Wedge or something.
I see what you're saying.
But I'm saying I think that was the show, they didn't instill hope in the current people, but coming up, Rey's going to be a general 10 years later, or things like that. I think it's going to be a pretty big jump.
You might think we're going to see more of like a Clone Wars-esque kind of movie.
I think it's going to be kind of a grander scale, because the whole 25 people aren't going to beat the First Order. Even for Star Wars, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think they jump at least 5 years. And you kind of get to see the end of the conflict.
I never really thought about it.
Because, that lets you kill off Leia at the beginning. You start with the scroll. Maybe it's Leia's funeral or something.
Yeah.
Rey kind of takes over, or Poe takes over.
Yeah.
Which I think it should be the purple-haired woman. I was really upset that they killed her off, because they built her up just to kill her off. Yeah. I really think the best thing would have been flip the script, put Leia on the ship, let her go out.
I kind of agree with that. As much flack as Admiral Holdo got, I feel like she could have been one of the better characters if she developed enough and had a movie or two to kind of really cement her. Because going in watching the trailers and seeing her and finding out about her, I was like, oh, this is the obvious Leia replacement. That makes total sense, and I'm kind of fine with this. But then they killed her, and I was like,
The fuck?
Oh, okay.
I thought it
One
was
of the
a really
coolest
good-
scenes in the movie, though.
That's
Yeah.
true.
The fact they had to put signs up is ridiculous. I'm
Yes.
sure one person threw a fit. They had to put signs outside that said, the audio cuts out like 2 hours in. Don't come complain to us, basically. It's only out for like 10 seconds. So
Yes.
how upset must someone have gone after like 2 seconds and just walked out?
Oh my god, I missed.
Quiet.
What is this?
Flip this
Such a cool
Sorry.
scene. So many cool scenes in that movie. It was the prettiest Star Wars movie.
I
Yeah.
will agree
I think it had the
with that.
most iconic
Yeah.
scenes.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
As far as like if you took a still frame, maybe not like Luke versus Vader with the sabers crossed is cool, but the cinematography
I don't know,
of
Luke-
that whole fight
Yeah, Luke versus
was insane.
all those ATA.
Oh no,
AT-ATs
I'm talking about
was just
the Kylo Ray fight,
Yeah.
which was my favorite scene.
when
Yeah.
yes.
Was just it was the first time I felt like
I
it was
was
real
so
lightsaber fighting.
confused. So, like within Star Wars lore, there are certain like high-ranking troops that can end up like wielding lightsabers and stuff like that, or Dark Disciples. Who I'm very confused who the Knights of Ren are.
Okay,
And
I wanted to get to this.
They had weird energy beams on their weapons, which I feel like isn't necessarily. They try to be like it's kind of force.
It was a vibroblade.
Yeah, well, vibroblades they don't have that same
Oh,
sort
well,
of
those
like.
weren't Knights of Ren. Those were just
Those weren't the Knights of Ren.
Praetorian
No, so
guards.
those are like the Imperial Guards were the same way. So he sought out.
So those were just
Force
Imperial
yeah.
guards. Those weren't just.
Yeah, they were the
okay.
Emperor's
They were
guards.
just okay. That's
It was the
fine.
same thing. I'm sure he sought out force sensitive people who could kind of do it.
Yeah.
But you don't tell them they're force
Okay.
sensitive because that's
That's
bad
true.
news.
Okay.
So Knights of Ren.
Okay.
Biggest miss of this movie
That's
was
true.
just blowing them
And
off.
that's why I kind of felt like it was supposed to be that with the Imperial guards,
Fair
but I
enough.
think they're saving them
Yes.
for the next movie.
I think this has been like the biggest red herring in this new trilogy.
Uh-huh.
So we've known about them since Force Awakens,
Mhm.
and like that vision thing or whatever, where it's like
You see
Kylo
'em
Ren,
all,
like
and yeah.
okay, and that's
and they do
whatever.
mention that he took other students
Uh-huh.
repeatedly,
I think-
but in the background.
I think that they don't exist yet. I think that the Knights of Ren aren't a thing right now, and that
Like they died off, or is
Well-
it something that he needs to get?
I think that
full power
I think that now
before-
he's taken out Snoke. He's
Ah,
going to assemble the Knights
I
of Ren.
see.
You think they just dispersed after they left the other
Could've.
ones?
So you think they've been talking about plans this whole time whenever they mention the Knights of Ren?
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they're these.
That they exist and that
beings
they're
that
out doing
exist.
all these things.
I think you could
They
also
could,
say
but-
Snoke took them and was training them separate because the Emperor did the same thing to test Vader.
that could be.
tested a
That's
bunch
true.
of people.
That's true. That's true.
Also, so I don't. This is not what I want them to do.
Okay.
I think there's a large possibility, and I'm going to be very angry if this is true, that Snoke was a Force projection, just like
Yeah.
Luke.
I think he might. Be.
Because throughout this whole new trilogy, they've done a lot with introduce something. Oh,
Take
here
away,
it is
yeah.
again. Like
Sure.
everything that's been introduced has had a purpose.
Mhm.
The Luke thing was cool, but it would have been just as cool if it was actually Luke there. I guess is my logic.
Mhm.
And if you watch, like, how does Snoke influence people across the galaxy, but get blinded? Like, the Emperor got blinded because he got lazy, basically.
Absolutely.
So Jedi got blinded because they got lazy.
Yeah.
Snoke wasn't lazy. He was working angles across the galaxy. I
Yeah.
could see it just as likely that he let that happen so Kylo assumes power and he has a
Yeah.
long con.
I think it's either that, which he comes back or whatever, which I agree. I don't think I would like that. Or is this the thing where like you say like he's playing angles and like his death was always like a part of it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I do feel like he's dumb enough to get killed by that kind of trick.
I think that's more of what the Legends era would have done.
Okay.
And in terms of, because Palpatine still had his clones
Yeah.
and all that stuff and reborns and all that. I could see them doing that if this was if it wasn't Disney.
Yeah.
I think they killed him. I think
Okay.
the whole point is that they killed Luke and they killed Snoke, and now both of these people have to assume the master roles. Like,
I think Luke's still around, by the way. He's a
And-
Force ghost all
Yeah,
day.
absolutely.
sure, yeah, he'll come back as a ghost, but I don't think that they're going to let Snoke come back and just be like, I got you. I think they'll
Yeah.
do that in some book. I think they'll do that in some, but just not on the big screen. I don't think, maybe
agree.
even the TV show will say, hey, Snoke's been, did you guys play the campaign for Battlefront 2,
Yeah.
where there's like that locked area of
Yeah.
like was it holocrons or something? I could see that happening where he has his own facility or like his own Darth Vader's castle or whatever.
Sure.
And he has his own sort of like area where he has his own contingencies for all that with the original order and then the new order and whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But I don't think that currently Disney's going to be like, they pull the wool over your eyes just to make you think he's dead and then bring him back.
Yeah.
Unless they're trying to do something the same way with like Luke coming back and then fighting off Snoke, and then it's just a duel between Rey
that makes sense.
Rey and
I feel like this
Kylo.
next movie needs to be like 3 hours long. Honestly,
yeah,
to hit
they need to just
everything
give that
at this
to
point.
us. King Kong it. King
Kong
it.
we talked earlier
With Jack
about the
Black.
fact. To me, this movie really pointed out the wrongs of the first movie because they had to hit the checklist of.
Yeah.
Like I always say, that JJ probably walked in and they gave him a list of crap he had to do in this movie.
To like curry favor.
But it was really a wasted movie, Episode 7.
Okay.
Because the story, it basically introduced these characters and nothing happened with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then 8 picked up the slack, which is maybe why some people were so taken aback because so much happened.
There was a lot that happened.
But
We had
really,
keep
to
track
me,
of a lot of shit.
if you took 8 and like 10 minutes of 7, put them together and name that Episode 7,
yeah.
way better than what we're sitting at now.
Because we didn't have to see, like, at least in Episode 7, everything to do with Han Solo and that random crew that got on his ship, the tentacle monsters.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't necessarily need to be in there.
Club.
You could probably take away most of the stuff that kind of introduced Rey in a
If you
weird
kind
way.
of avoid basically the whole the Maz, if you took out Maz because she doesn't really do anything in this next movie, I'm hoping she shows up in Solo, so I feel like there's a reason she existed, I guess, because he knew her obviously beforehand. And to hang out for, but I think Solo's the perfect place to be like, oh, here's kind of, when he first met her. But I think you take out most of the extras that they did just for fanfare. Keep the whole. If Kylo kills Han at the end of like 3/4 of the way through 8, I feel like that kind of completes it. And you take a little bit of 8 and put in what's going to be 9, I guess. But I just feel like 7 was wasted. And I really don't. 7's close to the bottom for me. 8, so I was the opposite. I started after the first watching, like, this is okay. I texted Eric, my friend, because he hated 7.
Okay.
Said it ruined Star Wars for him. Almost didn't go to see 8. Despised it.
I was pretty close to that.
And I texted him, I'm like, it's an okay movie. Like, you're going to like it. I think it's gonna be Star Wars again for you. And he texted that he agreed. But then the next time I watched it, after like listening to everyone's complaints, I was kind of looking for it to be like, no, all your complaints are dumb. And pretty much most of the complaints were dumb. Like, even people who were mad about Phasma again. That fight scene with Finn was legit. It was cool.
It was pretty
Everything except for Finn's comment where he called her Chrome Gnome, and that fight scene was awesome.
I
That's the
think
only thing
that's indicative of his character.
I agree.
Come on.
I don't like his character.
It's not Star Wars. It's
Yeah.
very Hollywood, but it
wish
still
they-
feels like Finn.
So
in a
I would
weird
like
way.
Finn better if they had stuck with killing Poe. And because they killed Poe originally in the 7, and then people were like, no, we like Oscar Isaacson. Keep him. So that's why Poe disappears for all of 7 and then comes back.
And I actually did not like his dynamic with the purple-haired Holden. Yeah.
I thought,
I
they
did
needed
not
something to
enjoy
do
that.
with him then. That's what I'm saying. They
Yeah.
needed something to do. I also think my dad and I kind of played out our reshoot. You take Poe and Rose off the ship completely. They're not on the ship at all.
Okay.
You take them, you put them on whatever. It doesn't have to be the Canto, whatever that.
Canto Bight.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that place.
Okay.
But you keep them off the ship. Phasma's chasing them the whole time. That way you get some Phasma in there. They actually have a purpose rather than sneak off the ship to get someone to sneak back on the ship.
Yeah,
It makes more sense if they're
that
off
made
the ship and they're like,
zero
hey,
sense to me,
Finn,
too.
we're in trouble.
If it was that
We
easy
need
just
your
to
help.
jet and not get vaporized,
And then
I'd fit a lot more people than just 2.
And then I feel like Oscar Isaacson, him being there created the biggest problem. The most anger I had in the movie was why didn't she just tell them the plan?
Yeah.
And then they try to like prove like she shouldn't have told them because then the first thing he does is yell at Finn, and that's when Benicio del Toro hears him, is when Poe's like saying that she's gonna get us all killed. But that doesn't make sense to me. If you've got this guy who's literally mutiny, don't be like, hey dude, so they're not even gonna, because as soon as they told him Poe knew, he's like, Oh, yeah, like this all makes sense now.
Yeah.
But you just needed something to do with Poe.
Maybe, you
don't need Poe.
It seems like kind of like thinking on like Leia's character for a second that like she trusts Poe, but she understands that like he has like a lot of lessons to learn. And so maybe like them keeping this command or whatever secret from him was more of like a test that Leia was like making like jump through or whatever. Like,
well, he failed hardcore.
Yeah.
Almost got everyone killed. Ended up getting everyone killed.
Yeah. It's like,
also, by the way, Poe got everyone killed. Can we take a moment? Shout out to Poe. Got all but 35 people of the Resistance killed.
Hey,
because he had to yell.
He's trying.
Had to send had to tell Finn what the plan was.
Yeah.
That was a nice touch though, because right after we got out of the movie, someone that we watched it with is like, well, I don't even know how Benicio del Toro knew that they were doing that. I'm like, well, he was like casually sitting in the background, and you can even see him like lean forward when they start talking about the plan. There's a lot of details like that.
Yeah.
Like when Luke's about to kill Kylo, he's got kind of almost the Sith eyes. You know how the yellow?
Yeah,
he didn't have the yellow eyes, but he had those dark bags that form.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at him in the flashback, it's bad. And I thought they were going to reveal that. I mean, they still could, or they could not. Who cares? That Snoke was actually influencing Luke more than he was Kylo. Because the way Kylo tells it, he wasn't really being influenced at all. So I thought Snoke was actually doing it to Luke to push Kylo over the edge.
That would make sense because in the Clone Wars series, they pretty much just show that Darth Sidious is manipulating the whole Jedi Order throughout like the entirety of everything.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be that surprised if this supreme powerful leader with this,
who can
clearly benevolent power, didn't mess with Luke, even though he was a hermit in some place that no one knew.
And that makes more sense to me as to why Luke goes full recluse. Obviously he blamed himself for the whole thing, but if he realizes he shut himself off for the Force because he realized the Force is what was being used to manipulate him.
Did they name that planet?
It has a name.
I don't. Tython.
Octo.
Why was it something else? Why was it not Tython? Why would
What is that?
Tython is like the original.
He's really all up in arms about them pulling bits and pieces, but not all the
Tython's
pieces.
The original, and it's the original home of I guess after the Jedi left the Republic, that's where they went for isolation for a while in the Old Republic, and essentially it became like a beacon of light, like one of the original light planets or whatever that means for Star Wars. So I really thought, because they said, and it's located within like the deep core, and that's where the map was leading. So I kind of assumed that it would be in some mythical place.
For our listeners, Tython, this is from Wikipedia. Tython was a planet located in the galaxy's deep core that was shrouded in myth. Some Jedi scholars made a case for Tython as the location of the Jedi Order's first Jedi temple, alongside other candidate worlds, such as Octo, Coruscant, Jedha, and Ossus? Ossus?
Let's go with Ossus.
Ossus, for sure.
Ossus. You don't know anything, Sword. We just proved it.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Real quick.
For our listeners, as soon as I read Octo, I looked at Soren, so it was really a good bit.
It was a good letter.
Okay.
Yoda. Was that not just the best cameo of anyone? I thought that was awesome. Yeah. One, it was Puppet Yoda. If it wasn't Puppet Yoda,
my mom was pretty excited.
We revolt. Animated Yoda is garbage. Puppet Yoda is love. And he was old Yoda, and it was just so... He just trolled Luke.
He was old Yoda, too. Did it seem... What he was saying, did it seem kind of lining up with what he was saying in the other 6 movies?
Oh, man, I don't know.
Or
did you... I felt it was very progressive.
I felt like his quote is one of... It just hit me deep. The whole, like...
Yeah. I also thought that scene was very... kind of a middle finger, but also just trust us kind of deal with the fans, where they burned the tree and the old, the old books, essentially and said, the past has to die, leave it in the past. There's a new future coming, and just you got to prepare for it. You can't just recluse yourself or whatever. But I just don't feel like that's the advice he's been given.
I mean, what he was saying kind of was like they already know all this, like those teachings, and I feel like that's maybe kind of the theme of the movie. And it's what Mark Hamill says. The quote that everyone cuts off. Mm-hmm. Mark Hamill says that he went to Ryan and said, "I fundamentally disagreed with everything you're doing with my character." They end the quote there usually. Next part of the interview, he says, But once I saw what he did, it made sense why it had to be that way.
I felt bad for Mark Hamill at that point. I was like, no, he wasn't trying to diss stuff.
And that's the thing.
And that made sense because for once, like, as much as everyone kind of thinks, they were too close, how bad would it have been if Mark Hamill was just Obi-Wan? If he just trained Rey and sent her off to
I'd be like, wow,
killed.
This is garbage.
And he legitimately died the same way. I mean, he disappeared like Obi-Wan. But it was different. It was so different, yeah. And I think
reasoning,
I mean, as much as you said you didn't like how much it mirrored, most of my complaints that I've heard, not that I have, was people were saying like, all the same people who said Episode 7's too much like it were like, well, this isn't Star Wars. Like, if this was Star Wars, they would have done this, and this different.
Yeah.
And
no one can be satisfied.
And I really think Rian Johnson, especially with what he did with the Force, literally set the future for Star Wars. He changed. I mean, in the movies, the Force has never been anything.
Exactly, and that was the one thing I loved about these new films is that even though it's not pushing too much in terms of what we've seen before, doing something different and rehashing the same movies we've seen, they're still pulling a lot of the Force powers, a lot of the sort of inner conflicts between families and other people who get involved in those conflicts, and they're just rewriting it. So I'm, in terms of a fan who's disappointed we're not seeing all the cool stuff that is within the universe that they could clearly be pulling from and clearly be taking. They're still pushing the envelope because they pull certain things and they do certain nods to the people who do read that stuff. Because force projection has never ever been talked about.
That's true.
And then you see that. And you've never seen the kind of scale, maybe a little bit in Episode 2 when Yoda kind of comes out there and they do all that little force battle. I think that was the most that the force has kind of been.
It was a terrible way to do that.
Yeah, that scene was I can just do this, and then they throw it at the very end when Rey moves all those rocks. That that scene right there. I was like,
cool.
All right,
I like what they say about Luke too when they're talking about how when he says, "What am I supposed to do? Win this war by myself?" And they talk about how it's not really about him fighting anything. It's all about the idea of him. And I think sometimes people forget, like, to everyone, somehow in 25 years, I mean, they did a real bang-up job of deleting the Jedi from history in the 25 years that the Emperor was over.
Yes.
And people are like, well, why doesn't Luke just come fix everything? Well, to all these other people, like, Luke Skywalker probably wasn't a real person. Like, they talk about, like, he was the hope. He's like a folk hero. Like, it didn't make sense that someone could literally control things because the Force isn't real to them. Yeah. And so the only people who believe that Luke actually used the Force were the people who started. Han Solo's kind of the analog. Like, absolutely didn't believe anything to it's all
like
true.
Seeing is believing, those are things. Yeah. I remember when I used to think about those things.
I feel like that kind of tied them into a corner with Solo again, though. I feel like Solo, the biggest issue Solo has is there's so many restrictions coming in.
It's such a
you got to feed him. He can't become a hero.
Character.
He can't become a hero is the biggest issue, and that's going to upset people because Han Solo had a backstory. The backstory was he was a smuggler who didn't really want any part to do with the conflict, and at the end of the very first Star Wars movie, very blatantly becomes a hero.
Yep.
Yes.
So what are you going to do in the Solo movies? Where he's always a little heroic, obviously. He left the Empire because he disagreed with what they were doing. But it's not like he can have this big redeeming moment. If he does, what was the point of the original redeeming moment?
That's true.
I think...
library.
I definitely agree with that. I think that's going to be... The downfall of this movie is Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford essentially is what links, Star Wars to Han Solo or him to Star Wars. And once you say, this is, all about Han Solo, you expect the same sort of...
It's got to be a 5-day movie.
Nerf herder. It's got to be a
5 like it can't take place more than 5 days. It has to be such a small snippet that there's no possible way it could lead into anything else.
Because the Kessel Run kind of sounds like that. It's essentially the same sort of Luke myth. Like,
I bet those tentacles, I bet those are the Kessel Run.
10, 11 parsecs, 12 parsecs, whatever he says.
Where you're basically cutting off distance because it's so hard.
Parsecs, isn't it? Okay.
I don't know. You guys said so many numbers. They all sound
like
11, 12?
Me gusta numero.
One's a joke that Ray
one
says.
Is, yes.
She's like, wasn't it like 17 parsecs? He's like 14 or whatever the hell it is. We're terrible Star Wars fans. We should know that.
But
We're
that's going to be
Googling.
Less than 12 parsecs.
Less than 12 parsecs.
That's why it's a very abstract number.
Yeah, and that's why I always get confused. So I think
you guys want to know, just so we know what a parsec is for scale here. It's like a huge number, right?
A parsec is a unit of length that used to measure
equal to 3.26 light years, 31 trillion kilometers, 19 trillion miles, which is a fake unit, miles, imperial units. Pfft. We'll do a different podcast on why metric's better.
Welcome to Metric Cast. We're scrapping.
Yeah, I do think the tentacles, I feel like, are part of the Kessel Run.
I think they absolutely have to be. And
that would make sense why it's so dangerous to get through is meteors and Cthulhu is in the middle of it, apparently.
Right. So from watching the trailer, it seems like it's a heist movie.
Yes.
Which I love heist movies. Big Oceans fan.
Yes.
Even the shittier ones are amazing.
Yes.
So they kind of like take that vibe and just drop Star Wars characters into it. I'll be happy. It's like, we got to assemble a team.
Yeah.
And then they go,
Lando Calrissian.
My only worry with that is it's going to become like, I don't want Star Wars to become like superhero movies, how it's its own genre.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Star Wars movies, really. I want some. Like Rogue One was awesome because it was, but if you start doing all these things and just throwing them in Star Wars because that's what they do, I feel like it dilutes it. Like the trilogies have the potential to like do some really cool stuff as long as it's really Star Wars. I don't know if it was before the podcast or during that I said I'm really worried, it's just going to be aliens in the Star Wars universe without Jedi or anything in these trilogies.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'm waiting until another Sith empire arises that's actually based in Sith culture.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think that the traditional Star Wars movies have always never been, or even like material has never even come close to. Because even in like the other books and stuff like that, they still find like these ancient tribes of Sith who are like left and just don't really care about the Republican stuff.
So bad.
Yes.
I want to see the Sith Valley.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I want to Sith Valley is number one on my list
of things to do with them in their origins or something. Because like
Snoke
to me was just such a throwaway character.
But they have this whole backstory they wouldn't tell us.
Yes.
And I don't know why.
I don't know why.
I think they have to make a book, right?
I'd read that.
They got to.
But they told Andy Serkis they had a backstory, which is one of the reasons I kind of think he's not gone. Or at least he might be there, but not in time with it.
Like a full audio book.
Because they've only done one flashback in Star Wars, and it was in Episode 8. I guess that was the first time they've ever done a flashback. They could do a flashback of Snoke's history, I think, to start the next movie. I think I'd be okay with that. Kind of like accelerated.
Because they could just follow the story of a kid, and just come the same sort of kid we saw from like at the end of Episode 8 coming up, and then there'd just be some defining moment where he just snaps, and that's who Snoke is.
I have to know where Snoke, where Emperor died 20 years later.
Yeah.
Where Snoke?
Well, and
where Snoke be? Where's Snoke be doing?
They could do the whole thing where, like, in the Old Republic, there was just a random emperor out in the deep, or out in the...
Well, they retreated to Outer Core. I'm absolutely positive he was out in the Outer Core. Yeah. But I want to know what Snoke be doing in his pastime, in his free time.
And I think we've talked about this on the other Star Wars cast, where, like, I think towards the end of, like, Emperor Palpatine's, like, reign... He was like sending out like expeditions.
Trying to find this power.
Because he's like he would just hear things like called to him like through the Force, and he's just like,
no shit.
There's things out there. I don't know what it is, but go out there.
Send Vader. It reminds me of like those Robot Chicken skits that they do, where it'd just be like the daily of the Death Star, and so there's one where he's going up an escalator, and there's a down one, and then like the stormtrooper is like. Emperor? He was like, Stormtrooper.
Yes.
Fuck you.
Yes.
No.
Oh, no.
He like looked up and went through the tablet to make sure we were in here.
Real shit right here.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any final thoughts on Solo or Star Wars?
Solo's going to be a very... good. So here's my thing. I love anything Star Wars.
Same. Yeah.
Literally, I modded Fallout 4 to the point where you probably can't tell if it's Battlefront or if it's regular. You probably could, but there's so many stormtroopers and shit running around. And now all the new weapons have integrated themselves into the economy of the world. So now people actually have lightsabers randomly. It's a long process. We're getting there. But
Literally months.
Yeah,
for
months.
a scale.
Literally months. I have
Since
so many hours of
in
footage
May.
to go through.
You graduated in
I know.
May, and I'm pretty sure you started like 2 days later. So
Yep. It's been a fun trek.
this is
It's been
what
my
happens when
yearly
you
project.
graduate college, kids.
Yep.
You mod
You
Fallout.
mod and you find jobs.
4,000
It
hours.
teaches you real important skills. Please
Yeah.
go.
It does. But as long as there's Star Wars stuff coming out, I'm fine. They're gonna try and push and explain
Episode
some
7
cool
showed
stuff.
me that's not true for me.
It sparked,
Even then.
but it was the spark of hope we needed.
Yeah,
It was the
burn
spark.
the First Order to
It's
the
gonna-
ground.
Exactly.
I'm done. I'm done with Star Wars now.
One last final word I will say on Solo, that I know that I keep referencing our other Star Wars cast, that we talked about this. There wasn't even a teaser or anything. I think there was just like rumors of like, well, obviously, Ron Howard took over, and they had to get
An
the
acting
main
coach.
character, an acting coach, and we're just like, holy hell.
Yeah.
This is going to be such
Yeah.
a clusterfuck.
But I think the trailer looks good.
The trailer looks good.
I think there's some hope, maybe, just because of how
Yeah.
the last movie went.
I'm hoping they edited as little of Han Solo into the Solo movie as possible.
Like, it's just-
what I think they basically did. They're like, we got
Like they're gonna
Childish
put like an hour
Gambino.
of Childish
We've
Gambino
got-
music in there.
Yeah, we have
and they'll just like go with that.
Woody Harrelson. It's just record Woody
Yeah.
saying stuff and throw him in there.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways, I'm excited for it.
Oh, sorry. I know
Yes.
you said one last thing.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Where is Billy D? Why is he the only one who's not back? Where's Billy D? He voiced his character in Battlefront 2.
Billy
Did.
he's talking shit on people.
Where is Billy D. Williams?
That's a good. That's the title.
No
right
one wants
there.
to see Lando literally just look terrible. But
I mean-
I kind of do.
So during this time, at least in Legends, he just goes off and makes a fortune. Like he gets
Yeah.
some sort of mining company, and he gets some sort of deal with a weapons company or some shit, and just pretty much works it.
Lando's basically our friend Wesley. Mine and Ian's friend Wesley. He just finds a way to make things
Just,
work.
yeah. I think that's and he finds a wife, and I think they might have a kid.
Baby
They will
Billy?
have a kid. Yeah, baby Billy. Hey,
All right.
baby.
All right, so I was gonna Google Billy T. Williams talking shit because he said something like really like radical, like
Where the hell is Billy
a few
D.
months
Williams in
ago.
the movies?
But I can't remember what he said, and we'll just drop it.